Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. This is Rock and Roll Spot coming at you with our first installment of the horror-themed October videos. Today I'll be going through my 10 favorite horror movies of all time, starting at the bottom. Now, first off, as always with any listing I do, this all has to do with my opinion. Some of you may disagree with how good some of these movies are, some of these movies deserve to be on the list, and some of you may think that others should be higher up. Anywho, this is my opinion. That's all. Also, a lot of these movies are known to have, shall we say, shitty sequels, sometimes in multitude. That being the case, those said shitty sequels, and in fact, unless otherwise mentioned, sequels in general are not part of the consideration for the movie. Each movie stands on its own unless otherwise specified. So anyways, moving on to the list itself. At number 10, we have Final Destination. Now, this was a movie that came out about the very late 90s. If I remember correctly, it was in 1999, and was about a high school senior class going to France for senior trip. As the group is boarding the plane, one of the kids, played by Devon Sawa, has a vision of the plane exploding, seeing who dies in what order, so on and so forth. He, of course, freaks out about it, and him and a handful of others get thrown off the plane. Of course, while the airport police while everyone's interrogating him and the others, the plane actually does blow up, and after they get back home, one by one, the survivors get picked off, pretty much in the order they would have died on the plane. Then, and basically, of course, death's plan is averted, at least temporarily, and we're led to believe by the end. Anyway, I really like the idea of death or fate being the killer, the quote-unquote killer. And the first one actually does tell a fairly decent story, in my mind, of fighting one's destiny, as the whole point of thwarting death's plan is about stopping your destiny, so to speak. And on a guilty pleasure note, the kill scenes and the setups to them are kind of fun to watch. Alright, moving on to number 9. The original Nightmare on Elm Street. I shouldn't have to summarize this. Freddy Krueger kills people in their dreams. Boom. Anyway. So, now, first off, this is one of the quintessential movies of the slasher subgenre of horror. For one thing, you have, of course, your more than human killer, the former Freddy Krueger. And to be perfectly honest, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the first 2 Halloween movies, and the first 4 Friday the 13th, in a perfect world, would share the spot. But why does Nightmare beat the others out? Freddy Krueger and shit tons of personality. Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers have personality in the form of being unrelatable and having, well, no personality, really. They're strong. They're referred to in slasher stereotypes as the strong silent type. They just keep coming. Freddy, however, comes off as actually kind of human. Admittedly deep fried, but human nonetheless, and this is partially due to his rather macabre sense of humor, and the fact that he actually speaks. Robert Englund and Wes Craven actually created one of the all-time greats character-wise with this movie, and it has some really awesome effects shots. What happens to Johnny Depp, I still, to this day, I can't even figure that out, what happened. aside from his bed, ate him and puked him up. And on to number 8, American Werewolf in London. First off, this is one of the best werewolf movies ever. It features one of the most well-done shifting scenes to ever be put on film, which is, in all honesty, tied with The Howling. Seriously, both of these have just amazing shifting scenes. And when I say The Howling, I mean the first Howling, not 2, 3, 50, whatever we're on. And it delivers a severe gut punch of the monster, the nightmarish monster, the werewolf, turning out to be this really nice guy. And it just the first time he changes. First off, it's amazing to watch, but when it happens, you just it kind of kills you inside. Just like you know that this kid that we've been kind of you want to root for him. At the same time you're gonna want to root for him to die. Well acted, well, decently written. Also, the various locations, the moors, Piccadilly Square, so all of it's just or Piccadilly Circus. I mean, but all of it's just and it still holds up, and like I said, even the transformation sequence. Anyways, moving on to number 7, Trick or Treat. This is an anthology of 4 interwoven tales set on Halloween, which was advertised to come out in theaters around close to 10 years ago, and it just never showed up. It may have shown up in select cities, but this is honestly with I think part of the life it's had on home media is because of the fact that it did not at least get a wide release, and people saw previews for it for years, and then when they finally were able to own it, they said, "Screw it, I'll buy it." Anyways, the tales themselves deal with all manner of tropes and superstitions of concerning the holiday itself, as well as the horror genre. All of them are lovingly placed by the writer-director. And seriously, this is... If you enjoy Halloween, at least... if you enjoy the horror genre, and which means you more likely also enjoy Halloween, if you haven't watched this movie, you seriously should. Number 6, Near Dark. Definitely one of the best vampire movies of the last 25 to 30 years. It focuses on vampires who care more about feeding than anything else, which, hey, good. And also, how even with the fact that they care more about feeding, they also managed to pull off the concept of a family, so to speak, of vampires better than really any other attempt at doing so. Now, part of this is because of the cast, especially the actors playing the family. Notably speaking, Lance Henriksen, Jeanette Goldstein, and Bill Paxton, all of James Cameron's Aliens. Also, the script had quite a bit to do with it as well, but the three of them have such excellent chemistry. You can easily see them as being mom and dad, teenage son. You also have what I think was a much better portrayal of a child vampire in the form of Homer, who actually says at one point, asks if Bill Paxton's character can imagine what it's like to be a big man on the inside and a little man on the outside. Of course, Bill Paxton being the character played by Bill Paxton being who he is, where he says, "And do you know what it's like to hear about it every goddamn night?" Or just, well, you get the basic idea. Definitely one of the, like I said, definitely one of the best vampire movies of the last 25 to 30 years. Now, moving on to the upper portion of the list. Number 5, John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. First off, isolation is a very scary thing. When you combine paranoia with isolation, it gets far worse. John Carpenter definitely showed this in The Thing, as a research team in Antarctica fall one by one to a shape-shifting alien, which is brought to life in gruesome detail by courtesy of creature effect supervisor Rob Bottin. For one thing, this is a movie where, yes, a lot of it is the effect shocks, but also it's how the actors work off each other. Wilford Brimley, he just goes completely nuts. And the ending is... That is how you do... That's one of the best ways to do a horror movie. Leave the audience wondering just who exactly, if anyone, survived. Alright, number 4. Alien. Yes, I mentioned Aliens when I was talking about Near Dark, but Aliens is more of a war movie, whereas Alien is actually a haunted house movie. In fact, it's a haunted house movie that happens to be set on a spaceship. It has all the trappings thereof. The main characters are in a location they cannot leave. And something is going after them and taking them out one by one. This also kind of deals with a degree of paranoia. Call it corporate paranoia in this case, which makes it and the fact of the computer mother telling, basically giving orders for the company that are detrimental to the crew, and the reveal of Ash the android. And of course, the real centerpiece scene of the movie is the chest burster, when the xenomorph, the titular alien, or as it's referred to later on, the xenomorph, comes out, just pops out at dinner. I'll be honest, the first time I ever watched Alien, I left the room when that scene was coming up. I was almost 11 years old, and I couldn't sit through it. It's one of the best jumps. It's a great jump scare, and it still makes for one of the best ones to this day. And then another great thing about the movie is the fact that director Ridley Scott opted to only show the xenomorph in little bits and pieces for most of the movie. You would get one shot here for the middle third of the middle act of the movie. You really don't get a very clear, detailed look at the alien, and then in the final act when we really get a good look, where there are whole tracking shots just following it, and it's like saying, okay, namely when Parker and Lambert bite it. But yeah, again, there's no point in. Also, don't take this. Do not take this as saying I think Alien is a better movie than Aliens. Comparing the two is like comparing apples to laptops. Wait, that doesn't. Let's just say oranges to laptops. Not to open that can of worms. As like I said, Alien is a horror movie, whereas Aliens is a war movie. Plain and simple. Number 3, Cabin in the Woods. Admittedly, this movie is pretty much Scream for more rural-based horror, including, to be in all honesty, Friday the 13th. In fact, While recently rewatching the Friday the 13th movies, in the first couple, there's so the office rocker old man in Crystal Lake who pops up and tells the kids going to the camp that they're gonna die, and seeing that scene, all I could think of was, oh, hey, Harbinger. Um, However, now what this did differently, and in fact better than Scream, was that whereas Scream would explain the rules and then show each rule, show an example of each rule in a dark but tongue-in-cheek manner, Cabin keeps a dark tone for the vast majority of it. It's even and the dark humor downstairs in the downstairs portion is half the fun, I swear. The betting pool on which creature is going to be the one that our protagonist, our heroes are going to have to face. Also, while bringing to downstairs, that was beyond anything I could have expected. To be perfectly honest, I didn't see any trailers for the movie before I watched it. I decided to check it out based on word of mouth, and I think I had seen a trailer, and the trailer I saw made me think that it was an anthology movie about cabin, about a horror anthology with the maybe all set at the same cabin or similar cabins. But yeah, that fact that it was all one story, and you had like I said, the whole downstairs, the control room, the ritual. It made the movie so much more than some of its parts to me. And of course, one of my favorite bits is looking at the various creatures when you see them in their cages and when they're loosed upon the downstairs. There were just some really cool things, and I have to admit I'm curious as to how they would have been utilized in the movie if aside from or in the place of the pain worshipping zombie rednecks. I think they are pain worshipping zombie rednecks. Anywho, moving on, we're definitively in the home stretch now at this point. Number 2, The Exorcist. William Friedkin and William Peter Blatty's adaptation of Blatty's novel is a classic that, in all honesty, can still send chills down the spine over 40 years later. The dynamic between Max von Sydow and Jason Miller, his father's Marin Karras, is just excellent. Admittedly, for what little we get to see of it. And also, Linda Blair's Reagan, well, possessed by Pazuzu, that is by and far one of the creepiest horror antagonists on the screen. Now, keep in mind, I said on the screen, there are much worse than her. Moving on to number 1, the end of the list. Remember how I mentioned that each movie was being brought up on its own, and its sequels were not to be considered whatsoever, unless otherwise indicated? Well, this is one of those points. Hellraiser 1 and 2. The basic version, there's a puzzle box. You solve it, you get taken to a level of hell where the whole it is about blurs the line between pleasure and pain. Now, what I really love about these two is that the creatures that come out of the box, or that come when the box is opened, the Cenobites, they aren't the true villains or monsters of the piece, but rather it's the girl's stepmother and her uncle that are the villain, that are the real atrociously evil ones. And in the second one, the the doctor at the man running the insane, the doctor that runs the asylum that she's put in. Um, both of them are well shot. Uh, Good casting, especially the first one. Andrew Robinson, who played played Scorpio in Dirty Harry, as well as my personal favorite role of his, Elam Garrick on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, was so different from either of those roles as the father in the first one, and I still, to this day, I remember it's burned in my head. It's the last we see of him after he's been killed and skinned, and his brother has put his skin on, and the Cenobites come for him, and the hooks are dug into, and he simply says, "Jesus wept," and before getting pulled apart. Anywho, now the first movie actually does have an ending, and it's an open ending. It's the kind of thing of saying, yeah, hey, the box is still out there somewhere. Whereas the second one actually was a really good, okay, boom, we're done. Sadly, the cult success of the movies, the first two movies, pretty much said, hey, we're going to keep going. But that's not. But yeah, these two movies actually do tell a really a good horror story, in all honesty. And God, watching some of the scenes of the Cenobites, oof, they may look creepy as hell, but like I said, they're neither good nor evil. They simply, well, actually, I didn't say this, but I have said this. As I've said many times before, the Cenobites are neither good nor evil. They simply are. And I think that's what really makes them such great characters. Is the fact of them in those two movies. Anywho, that's all I got for this week's video. Be sure to check back on Wednesday. We'll be doing the weekly TV roundup once again. That'll be week 3. And then next week we'll have another horror-related video. Anywho, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Like the channel's Facebook page, links to which are both down below. And as always, live long, rock hard.